You've probably spent way too much time scrolling through spec sheets, trying to convince yourself that a 24-port, 10 GBE switch will magically solve every network headache. The real question is whether it actually fits into the day-to-day hustle of your office or home lab without turning setup into a second job. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at a core switch for a small but growing tech firm, the biggest worry was buying something that would sit on a rack, stay reliable for years, and let us expand without a massive redesign. The Ubiquiti Switch Enterprise XG24 promises exactly that, a 24-port, Layer 3 capable platform that can route between VLANs, handle 10 GBE uplinks, and be managed through the familiar UniFi interface. But promises are easy to make. The proof is in how it behaves when you actually plug in a few servers, a couple of workstations, and a handful of access points. Let's start with the physical reality of getting this box off the shelf and into a rack. The unit arrives pre-installed with a redundant power supply, which is a nice safety net if you're in a data center environment where uptime matters. Mounting it is straightforward. 4 screw holes line up with any standard 19-inch rack, and the front panel is designed so you can see port LEDs at a glance. You'll notice the ports are all RJ45 with 10 GBE capability, which means you don't have to worry about buying separate SFP Plus modules unless you have fiber runs. That simplicity is a real time saver. You just grab a Cat 6A or Cat 7 cable, click it in, and the link lights come on. The first thing I tested was basic connectivity. Plug a workstation into port 1, a file server into port 2, and a PI-capable access point into port 3. The XG24 can power small PO devices, but you'll want to double-check the power budget for larger APs. After a few seconds, the UniFi network controller recognized each device, assigned them to the default VLAN, and gave me a clean interface to rename ports, set static IPs, or enable DHCP. There's no need to log into a separate CLI or use a proprietary OS. The web UI feels like the rest of the UniFi suite, which is a huge comfort if you already run UniFi Wi-Fi or protect devices. Now, why does the Layer 3 capability matter in a real office? Imagine you have a guest network, a finance VLAN, and a development VLAN. With a traditional Layer 2 switch, you'd need an external router or firewall to route traffic between them, adding latency and another point of failure. The XG24 lets you create static routes directly on the switch, so traffic between VLAN 10, guest, and VLAN 20, finance, can be blocked or allowed with a simple rule. In practice, that means you can keep your finance machines isolated from the rest of the office without buying a separate router, which saves both money and space. However, the Layer 3 implementation isn't a full-blown routing engine. It handles static routes and basic inter-VLAN routing well, but you won't find advanced features like OSPF, BGP, or deep packet inspection. If you run a complex multi-site architecture that relies on dynamic routing protocols, you'll quickly hit the limits and need a dedicated router. So the XG24 is a solid middle ground for small to medium environments that need some routing, but it's not a replacement for a true edge router. One hidden trade-off I discovered is the heat management. The chassis is metal and the fans run continuously at a low speed, which keeps the unit within safe temperatures under normal load. But if you push every port to full 10 GBE utilization for extended periods, say, during a big data backup or a video rendering farm, the fans will spin up noticeably. That isn't a deal breaker, but it does add a bit of acoustic noise to a quiet server room. It's something to keep in mind if you're sensitive to background hum. Another practical point is firmware updates. Ubiquiti rolls out updates through the UniFi controller, and they're generally smooth. I've had the switch reboot once during an update without any loss of connectivity, but it did momentarily drop a couple of PO devices. If you rely on PO for critical devices like security cameras, you might want to schedule updates during off-peak hours. The process itself is simple. Just click Check for Updates in the controller, and the switch pulls the new firmware automatically. Who should consider buying the Ubiquiti Switch Enterprise XG24? First, Small businesses that are already in the UniFi ecosystem and need a reliable core switch that can handle both high-speed wired connections and basic routing. It's also a great fit for home lab enthusiasts who want to experiment with VLANs and inter-VLAN routing without breaking the bank on an enterprise-grade router. If you're running a handful of servers, a few workstations, and want to future-proof your network for 10 GBE growth, this unit gives you headroom without requiring a massive infrastructure overhaul. Who might skip it? If you're a large enterprise with hundreds of ports and need advanced routing protocols, you'll quickly outgrow the static Christianly design. Likewise, if you're looking for